The sea has always been a place of romance and of mystery. When Daniel and Claire boarded that Caribbean cruise, they believed they were stepping into a dream. Newlyweds, just 3 days married, with the glow of love still fresh on their faces. They laughed, they danced, they toasted to forever. To anyone watching, they were the very picture of happiness. But happiness has a cruel way of hiding what's to come. On the third night of their honeymoon, the laughter stopped. Claire's red dress was seen trailing behind her as she walked the halls, Daniel at her side. That was the last time anyone ever saw them alive. By morning, their cabin was empty, their passports untouched, their luggage neatly packed, and the ocean, endless, merciless, had swallowed them whole. For 9 years, the world asked the same question. What happened to the Whitmores? Were they victims of an accident? Or of something darker? And then, one stormy morning, on a lonely stretch of beach, a single suitcase washed ashore. Inside lay the answers that would change everything. Daniel Whitmore was 29, a software engineer from Austin, Texas. A quiet man, methodical, but with a dry humor that only Claire could draw out of him. Claire Thompson was 27, a bright-eyed nurse from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She was known for her kindness, her laughter, and her love of sunflowers. They were even embroidered into the hem of her wedding dress. The couple met by chance at a mutual friend's barbecue. Daniel spilled iced tea all over Claire's dress. Instead of being angry, she laughed. That moment, a small accident, sparked a love story. Friends would later say they were inseparable, two people who somehow completed each other. When Daniel proposed on a quiet dock at sunset, Claire cried so hard she could barely say yes. They married a year later in a small church with yellow sunflowers lining the aisle. Their wedding was simple, joyful, intimate. And just 2 days later, they boarded a cruise ship bound for the Caribbean. The honeymoon was supposed to be the start of everything. The ship, the Azure Star, was massive. A floating city with restaurants, casinos, pools, and entertainment stretching for 12 decks. Daniel and Claire splurged on a balcony suite. They took photos of the sunrise, videos of their meals, silly clips of themselves dancing in their cabin. Every captured memory painted the picture of young love at its happiest. But snapshots don't always tell the full story. It was the third night, November 18th. Other passengers remembered it as a lively evening. The ship had hosted a masquerade ball in the grand dining hall. Music, champagne, couples swirling beneath chandeliers. Claire wore a long crimson dress. Daniel, in a dark suit and mask, never strayed from her side. Around midnight, they left the party. Witnesses saw them laughing, her hand hooked in his arm. The two walked toward the upper deck. And then nothing. The next morning, housekeeping found their cabin eerily untouched. Their bed neatly made, as though no one had slept there. Claire's phone was still charging on the nightstand. Their passports were in the drawer. Their luggage, packed with clothes and souvenirs, sat unopened. The only thing missing was them. The ship's crew was alerted. Announcements rang out across the decks. Passengers searched hallways, dining areas, pools. But Daniel and Claire had simply vanished. By noon, the captain ordered a search of the waters. Lifeboats were lowered. Rescue teams scanned the waves. But the ocean was vast, blue stretching endlessly in every direction. No trace. The official story was immediate. An accident. Perhaps they'd gone for a late-night walk along the deck, leaned over, and fallen. A tragedy of chance. But not everyone believed that. Because when investigators looked closer, small details began to unravel the story. Other passengers reported hearing raised voices near the upper deck that night. A woman crying. A man's voice low and urgent. Security cameras covered most of the ship, but curiously, the corridor leading to their deck suite had no working footage. The cameras had been offline for maintenance. Even more suspicious, another passenger claimed he'd seen Daniel at the ship's bar around 1 a.m., alone pacing, looking agitated. Others swore they saw Claire by herself in the observation lounge, staring out at the water, tears streaking her face. Were the witnesses mistaken? Or had Daniel and Claire separated that night? And then there was the cabin itself. On Claire's pillow, police later found a single earring, the mate missing. The bathroom sink held a smear of what appeared to be blood. Just a trace. Just enough to raise questions. Yet the cruise line insisted, It was an accident. They offered condolences, covered expenses, and quietly urged the families not to pursue litigation. Claire's parents refused to believe it. They described their daughter as strong, happy, and deeply in love. Daniel's parents echoed the same. They wouldn't just fall overboard, his mother said. Something happened to them. For years, the families pushed for answers. For years, they found none. And then came the suitcase. 9 years passed. The story of Daniel and Claire faded from headlines, replaced by newer tragedies. Their families clung to fading hope, mourning but never truly letting go. Then, on a stormy September morning, a fisherman walking a beach in the Bahamas stumbled across a large black suitcase. Worn, salt-stained, its zippers corroded by time and sea. But it wasn't empty. Inside, carefully folded, were clothes. Men's shirts. A woman's red dress, shredded and stained dark. A pair of wedding rings wrapped in tissue. A disposable camera, its film still intact. And at the very bottom, something no one expected. A blood-stained knife, wrapped in plastic. Authorities confirmed it. The suitcase belonged to the Whitmores. For the first time in 9 years, the mystery cracked open. The disposable camera was rushed to specialists. Despite the damage, several photos were salvaged. The images were haunting. Claire on the deck smiling. Daniel holding her hand. Another shot, blurry, taken at night. Claire crying. Daniel, standing behind her. A shadow of another figure in the corner. Someone unrecognized. The last photo on the roll was the most chilling. A streak of red across the lens, a tilted angle, and Claire's terrified eyes staring into the camera. It was the last known image of her alive. Investigators reopened the case. With the knife, the dress, and the photographs, the accident theory collapsed. This was no simple fall overboard. Experts analyzed the knife. DNA confirmed it had traces of both Daniel and Claire's blood. The red dress, Claire's, was torn violently at the seams. Signs of a struggle. But the question remained. Who was the shadow in the photo? Cruise records showed something startling. On board the Azure Star that week was a man named Michael Anders. A crew member. Bartender by trade. Fired from previous ships for inappropriate conduct toward female passengers. He had been working the masquerade ball the night Daniel and Claire disappeared. Witnesses recalled him being overly friendly with Claire that night. Too friendly. Investigators built a theory. Michael may have followed the couple after the party. A confrontation ensued. Daniel fought to protect his wife. Claire struggled. And in the chaos, violence erupted. The blood. The torn dress. The missing couple. And then the ocean kept its secrets. But if Michael was guilty, why hide the evidence in a suitcase? And why had it surfaced 9 years later? The truth was darker still. A whistleblower, a former crew member, finally came forward. He revealed that the cruise line had quietly investigated Michael back in 2013. Several staff members suspected him, but higher-ups suppressed the findings. Why? Because admitting to murder on board a luxury cruise would devastate the company's reputation. Lawsuits, bankruptcy, scandal. Instead, they filed it away. Let the ocean erase the evidence. Called it an accident. But Michael Anders never faced trial. He left the cruise industry, changed his name, disappeared into ordinary life. Until the suitcase surfaced. With new evidence, authorities tracked Michael Anders to a small town in Florida. He was arrested, charged with 2 counts of murder. The trial was sensational. Prosecutors presented the suitcase, the photos, the DNA evidence. The haunting final image of Claire's terrified eyes brought the courtroom to silence. Michael denied everything. Claimed the evidence was planted, the photos misinterpreted. But the jury didn't believe him. After 9 long years, justice was served. Michael Anders was sentenced to life in prison without parole. For Daniel and Claire's families, the verdict was bittersweet. They had answers, but no reunion. Closure, but not peace. At their gravesite, Claire's mother placed a single sunflower. Daniel's father whispered, "You're together now." The sea had tried to keep it secret. But in the end, the truth surfaced, tucked inside a battered suitcase, carried by the tide. And perhaps that is the cruelest part of this story, that 2 lives filled with love and hope could vanish so suddenly. and that justice came not from the strength of men, but from the persistence of the sea itself, because the ocean never forgets.